This week, to be closer to China, brain science and brain-like artificial intelligence, AI, have become hot areas of international competition. While the United States and European Union have launched large-scale research programs, China also stresses brain research. What's the current state of neuroscience in China?
Neuroscience today, if I use one word, is developing very fast, perhaps faster than other areas.
The China Brain Project is a key science and technology initiative of China's 13th five-year plan. What's the overall goal of the China Brain Project?
Our center is exactly tuned to the one-body, two-wing structure to develop our research program.
This week, be closer to China. What is China's Brain Project, and how does it differ from brain projects in the US, Europe, and Japan? The human brain, about 3 pounds of wetware, is the most complex organization of matter in the known universe. Everything we sense, think, and feel comes from our brains. Many incapacitating diseases, especially age-related, such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, are diseases of the brain. I know this stuff. My doctorate is in neuroscience, brain research, and I've followed the burgeoning field for more than 50 years. What's the state of China's brain science today, its comparative strengths and weaknesses, its long-term ambitions? And what insights can we learn about China's science strategy in general from China's brain science in specific? How does China's Brain Project take us closer to China? It is the era of big science, and brain megaprojects are hot. In the US, the Brain Initiative focuses on neurotechnologies. In Europe, the Human Brain Project on supercomputer simulations of the brain. In Japan, the Brain Minds Project on brain mapping for brain disease studies. Though no country admits to competing in a global brain race, all of the national research teams hope to make breakthroughs, especially in the treatment of brain diseases such as Alzheimer's and depression. In 2016, the China Brain Project was listed as a key science and technology project of the 13th five-year plan. And in March 2018, the Beijing Center for Brain Research was established among Beijing's premier biomedical institutions, including the Chinese Academy of Sciences, the Academy of Military Medical Sciences, Peking University, and Tsinghua University. The focus will be on basic mechanisms underlying cognitive functions of the brain, early diagnosis and treatment of brain-related diseases, and advanced development of brain-machine intelligence technologies. According to Muming Pu, who played a key role in creating the China Brain Project, China has the largest patient populations in the world for all brain disorders, making research on prevention, early diagnosis, and early intervention particularly urgent, and offering the largest database for researchers to work with. The project could benefit 1/5 of China's 1.4 billion people who suffer from chronic neuropsychiatric or neurodegenerative diseases. What is the China Brain Project?
The Center of Excellence for Chinese Academy of Science was actually formed in preparation to take major responsibility in the China Brain Project. In fact, since I personally was helping last few years, helping organize the China Brain Project, I know what this project will be aiming at. Our center was exactly tuned to the one-body, two-wing structure to develop our research program.
What is the state today of neuroscience in China, which has been your entire career and was my early career, so I have a special interest in it and its importance for China?
Neuroscience today, if I use one word, is developing very fast, perhaps faster than other areas, but still, relatively speaking, compared to the world standard, is still at the primitive, I would say, or low level. Over the last 30-some years, China has mainly focused on economic development and at the very best some technology investment and paid less attention to basic science. Until very recent, I would say about the last 10 years or so, the government's finally realized it is important to have original research and to invest in basic science. And along with that, there are a few key figures who were trained in the US and Europe and other countries who return to China and become a leader of the country. And several of them are in the field of neuroscience. So that helped China's neuroscience develop perhaps a little faster than others. But relatively speaking, I give you a rough number. That is, in the US, Society for Neuroscience has about 44,000 people, members. In China, the Chinese Society for Neuroscience, I don't know, it's probably 4,500. So 10% of US, not to compare the seniority, the advance, the quality, the capability, just a sheer number. It's about a 10%. Does that give you a sense about where China's neuroscience stands?
So what is the overall goal of the China Brain Project, and what are the target years in the future for major achievements or benchmarks?
Right. So we have very clear benchmark for basic research, right? That benchmark is reflected in our Connectome project, right? 5 years we have a vertebrate species, zebrafish, Connectome down. Okay. 10 years with international collaborations, mouse Connectome. 15 years we are address major areas of monkey Connectome. Now, along that way, along the structural analysis of the Connectome, we are working on the functional studies of various functions associated with the structure that has already been elucidated. This is unlike the Human Genome Project because it's just a technical work. Now, the Connectome project, measles cell copy Connectome project in China, is not just a technical work. It's a work that goes along with functional studies. Anything we learn, technology developed for studying the structure, will be applied to manipulate, to understand the circuits.
After beating the world's elite Go player, Lisa Dahl, Google's AlphaGo defeated Ke Jie, the Go world champion. Some said Ke Jie had bad luck, but AlphaGo was overpowering. According to the ELO rating system, which is a method for calculating the relative skill levels of players in zero-sum games such as chess and Go, AlphaGo's winning probability exceeded 99%. The game was likened to a weightlifting contest between a human strongman and a hydraulic crane. While AlphaGo's victory gave public notice of the rapid development of artificial intelligence, the deep mechanism derived inspiration from brain cognition and neuroscience. Exploring recursively AI technologies and brain-inspired technologies is one of China's Brain Project's competitive advantages. In addition, China's Brain Project is expected to continue its monkey brain studies as China positions itself as a world leader in primate research. And by 2030, as about half of the world's patients with Parkinson's disease will be living in China, the heavy burden of neurological diseases has become a major concern. How about in the area of neurological diseases, a whole series from Parkinson's to all different kinds of dementias? What type work is being done, and what's the interest and commitment of China to focus on that as China's own population gets older?
The next science technology investment plan, which is called the 13-5 plan, the government has put a huge amount of money to encourage solving problems for disease in general and neurological psychiatric disease in particular. So there's now a growing interest in this overall area, but in particular, I would say the efforts could be divided into 3 parts. The first part is basically what I call characterization, cohort studies. We now have a lot of standards. It's mainly based on US or Western standards. For example, what is called Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer disease. The standards are all developed by Western. So what is the genes involved? There's no particular study that using Chinese population. So the Chinese government is putting lots of money to do what's called a cohort studies, a cohort of a particular Parkinson's disease or particular Alzheimer disease and so forth. So this is one area that is now growing interest. The second area is diagnosis. Perhaps I would include testing, biomarkers, and genetic testings as well. So there's a lot of interest both in from the government, from academic institutions, and from the industry that if you have a better way of diagnose or measure clinical symptoms, it helps you to understand the disease, and it also helps development of therapies. And that's why China has initiated what's called a precision medicine funding before the brain initiatives. The third area is to develop therapies. And the therapy doesn't have to be drug, although drug is the main way of treating diseases. So I would say now drug, especially small molecule drugs, China is particularly weak and is perhaps really behind the Western world. But the opportunities are rising in 3 other areas. One is macromolecule or big molecule, including proteins such as antibodies. The second area is medical device. You probably know that Parkinson's disease, there's a very effective treatment called deep brain stimulation. We have a professor at Tsinghua who developed a deep brain stimulation technology that is at this world level or even better. And so they've started a company and they're competing very well in the market.
China has made a major commitment to AI recently to become a critical part of Chinese science and indeed to forge to be if not the world leader as far as China's ultimate objective. So really that's looking to the next stage after the current phase of AI runs its course.
Exactly.
And who knows how long that's going to take. Everybody's excited about it.
5 years.
5 years, okay. It's 5 years. Some people may say longer, but after that they'll hit a wall. It's like a Moore's law will stop. And you have to go to some new way of thinking.
Exactly. I think that people are saying the AI field has gone into the peaks and valleys, up and down for last 3 decades. Now it's at the peak. Now it's going to going down. Now what's going to shape it, making another peak, is the brain-inspired technology.
So let's go back to the basic science area. So in order to support the 2 wings, the disease side and the AI side, what are some of the core basic science technologies that the whole institute is developing in general across China, and then what are areas that you specifically here in Shanghai at the Institute of Neuroscience?
The President Xi actually made a very wise and visionary comment on brain science. He said that the understanding of the connectivity of the brain is the key to understanding the most interesting problem, the consciousness of the brain. And that's the really high goal in the frontier of science. We have developed a monkey who can, through training, they can recognize themselves in the mirror. This has never been accomplished in the past because most people think that a human can recognize themselves in mirror. Babies, beyond 2 years, they can recognize themselves, and chimps can do it, but not monkey. So why? So we were able to, last couple of years, train different approach, train the monkey to recognize themselves in mirror. The way to do it is you put a mark, secretly put a mark on the face, monkey look at the mirror with scratch. That's a face mark test. All training, the monkey after training, they would have this ability. Now for years, it hasn't changed. So this, once we know that they have acquired this self-awareness or self-consciousness, at least as judged by the behavior, then we can ask what's happening in the brain. We can do brain imaging studies. We can do even do recordings from the intracellular recordings from the monkey to figure out what circuit is causing this change, right? And then there are autistic and psychiatric patients who happen to have lost the ability of recognizing themselves in the mirror. They still are even not interested in themselves in the mirror, or they just don't know. They couldn't recognize themselves, right? These are could again be approach we can help to intervene human patients once we know the circuit basis of consciousness or self-awareness, right? Now we can design robots if we know the circuit. What is actually showing the behavior of recognizing the mirror image?
So what are some of the specific basic science approaches that you're using that will advance the science of the brain and then derivatively help in the other two areas, in brain disease and in AI?
Now let me give you an example. So there are many people in our institute studying cognitive functions, using human and macaque as model, do psychophysical tests, assaying their perceptual functions and the cognitive functions quantitatively. Right? This is our basic research. However, we are now, based on the Chinese Academy Center for Excellence, we have assembled 9 different laboratories together to produce a cognitive functional test kit. So that we can quickly, using quantitative methods, measure the 15 different cognitive functions, from basic sensory perceptions to your multisensory integration, your attention, decision-making, working memory, all kinds, right? Impulsiveness, all this can be measured quantitatively. There are kits aiming at specific disease. That people will say, well, olfactory tests can predict Parkinson's, for example. There are the auditory tests for a specific disease. But our goal is much more broad spectrum, more aiming at early stages. We can test our sensitivity of our kits by patients. We have already done that. It's very sensitive, right? But we want to find early signs and progression of the changes of this index or these quantitative assays to predict the progression, the likelihood of developing serious problems in particular function.
Do you look forward to that primate institute being not only world-class but one of the top facilities in the world? Is that the goal?
The Shanghai government and the Chinese Academy of Sciences established an international center for primate brain research earlier this year. The goal of this center is to study the basic cognitive function of primates using non-human primates as a model, which means monkeys and marmoset. The higher cognitive function of non-human primates is much closer to humans, and they are the best model system for studying human cognition. So this is the basic aspect, and there's also a applied aspect of the center, that is to develop models for brain diseases using monkey as a model. This is because many of the drug development for brain diseases has failed so far because the use of mice as model was inadequate. They are too far from human. The drugs that work in mice doesn't work in humans. So having monkey as an animal model for drug testing, for testing various intervention approaches, would be ideal. So in this center, we will push for these 2 directions, and we call it international centers because we hope this center will become a platform for all the international investigators.
And so that's better for the monkeys' ethical well-being, and it's also better for research, because that's a much more natural environment. Right. So that's a very exciting, and the reaction from the international community?
Very enthusiastic. Everybody's enthusiastic. Maybe I have talked to selected people, but no. But the people I talk to, they are all very enthusiastic, want to participate and help. Right? Really, this is not we don't have enough expertise, to be frank, to run a world-class primary facility. We are learning. And in fact, we are scale small, and a very big international facility. We need experience from international people. But the will to accomplish a true international facility is there.
In its first year, the Chinese Institute for Brain Research plans to allocate about $29 million, funded by the Beijing municipal government, to hire the first 5 or 6 research groups. When operating at its full capacity of 50 researchers, ideally within 5 years, the research budget will need to be around $65 million per year. Simultaneously, a large neuroscience research science park is being built in Shanghai. The plan being to recruit even more principal investigators in Shanghai than in Beijing. There are hurdles that China must surmount on its climb up the global charts in brain science. Positions and grants must be determined by merit, not seniority, and young scientists will need the freedom to innovate and the confidence to fail. Are you making specific efforts to work with researchers in other countries for the work that you're currently doing?
Yes, I've participated in numerous discussions around the world concerning big brain science projects. There are 10 conferences held everywhere. Now I have been participating in Europe, in the US, in Australia, and Japan. I have been talking to people. Most brain scientists are enthusiastic about mesoscopic connectome.
And China's contribution.
And China's contribution. If China can contribute more, especially in doing the macaque monkey brain, right, it will be a benefit that everybody would hope to have. There was a saying that the reason China can study macaque is an advantage because the ethical standard is lower. That's absolutely wrong. Because our facility here are international. We follow the US NIH standard in our monkey care. In fact, we are putting together an international advisory board for our primate center, which are the head of the primate centers in Europe, France, Germany, UK, US, to help us develop a standard for, we are building a big primate facility for studying. The local government provided a huge investment to build this. This center will have the international standard better than anyone else in the world. Better than those in Europe and the US. That's our goal. We have better standard so that we do not go through the same ethical societal criticism. Because we have to present that. Because studying monkey brain is so important for brain science and for medical reasons. We got to keep this model system alive.
If you look ahead 20 years, which areas of neuroscience would you think China would be either the leader or one of the leaders?
I think China will be leading in the area of applying neuroscience for brain diseases and for developing of brain-inspired technology. While the US, I think, will still be leading in the next 20, 30 years in the area of studying basic science of the brain, studying the brain mechanisms for various type of brain functions. The reason for this is clear. At present, or over the last 5-10 years, the total number of neuroscientists in China is about 1/10 of that of US. The current government's investment into neuroscience is probably 1/20th of that of US. US has a lot more investigated, especially experienced leaders in the fields, of neuroscience. So we can expect that the U.S. will still be leading in the basic study of neuroscience. On the other hand, China have unique advantage for studying brain diseases. Large patient populations, now well-defined, a lot of the new animal models, non-human primate models are being developed in China. And in this brain disease area, China clearly will become the leading country in the world. And I think there's a tremendous interest now also in the area of brain-inspired technology, in developing new computing methods for machine learning, for developing new brain-like chips for computing, and all this could be moving very fast. Now, in this area of brain-inspired technology, it is clearly an area for competition among the world. In fact, I think U.S. is probably overall at the present is clearly leading, but it's not. It's hard to say whether the U.S. will still be leading in the next 10 years. So overall, I think in the applying neuroscience in the area of brain disease and brain-inspired AI, China clearly is in the position to be a leader in the next 10, 20 years.
Though no country admits to competing in a global brain race, all appreciate the rewards of curing neurodegenerative diseases and, most certainly, of accelerating brain-inspired artificial intelligence, AI. The specific objectives of China's BRAIN project are early diagnosis and treatment of neurological and psychiatric disorders, thereby reducing medical costs, especially in aging populations, and to catalyze advanced artificial intelligences via brain-based architectures and algorithms. China's brain science has entered an exciting time as young and established neuroscientists return from abroad, responding to the government's commitment to fund research at world-class levels. While China is developing capabilities in all areas of neuroscience, from gene editing to brain imaging, its competitive advantage lies in two areas: a huge population base that enables big data analyses of disease diagnosis and treatment, and the use of non-human primates, especially monkeys, for close-to-human animal model testing. Will China become a new world center for brain science? It takes more than money to attract top talent, including reform of the funding and management systems and greater freedoms for scientists. China's BRAIN project exemplifies China's goal to become a global powerhouse in science and technology, a goal of highest national importance, as stressed repeatedly by President Xi Jinping. To track China's science, track China's BRAIN project, to be closer to China.